What is your heart's desire? Well, I've got 5 ways that you can get whatever it is that you want, if that's what you really want. I'm Dr. Margaret Beyer, and this is Dr. Maggie Therapy. I have a PhD in marriage and family therapy with 30 plus years of experience helping individuals, couples, and families work through their issues and build better relationships. But before I get into it, please hit like and subscribe and leave any questions or comments so that I can help you too. Okay, so I'm talking today about what it is that we want. And one of the questions that I ask most frequently of my clients is just that. And it's probably one of the most dreaded questions that I ask my clients. What do you want? And quite frankly, a lot of times people really don't know. When they're put to that, they are at a loss. It's almost as though no one has ever asked them that question before. So that's really where we have to start, because if you don't know what you want, you can't really get much of anything. You know, the analogy of if you want to go somewhere, take a trip, you have to know where you're going and then put that destination in your GPS, or if you're old school, just look it up on the map. But you have to know where you're going. You have to know what you want. And so this is a lot like old-fashioned goal setting. It follows a lot of the SMART goals that we have. And for those of you who are not acquainted, a SMART goal is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So I'm going to go through those, but with a little bit of a different twist. I've been influenced heavily by Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. It was first published in 1937 and has had a couple of reprints since then. And he talks about what your heart's desire is. If you really want something, then you're going to go for it. And I often have said that people do what they want to do. And a lot of you may say, no, that's not true. That doesn't really happen. But the reality is, we don't often do what we should do, but we most often do what we want to do because we have made those choices. So let's talk about these goals. If you want to achieve something, you have to first say exactly, precisely what it is that you want. And I'm going to tell you, pull out a piece of paper and write it down. Without writing it down, it doesn't become very concrete. It's just an idea, a fantasy. You want to make sure that you concretize these ideas and have them written down so that you are committed to them. There's something about writing it down that locks in that commitment. So what is it that you want? What is your heart's desire? And you have to be very specific. You can't just say, well, as in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, oh, I want to be rich. Napoleon Hill says you have to put down a specific amount. And actually, when I've done this exercise through the book, it's hard for me to do because I'm not particularly money driven. But there are other things that I want. I want a better relationship with my family. I want to have success in my business. And so now that's very broad. So what is success? How do I measure that? Again, if my goal is to be achieved, it has to be something that I can measure. So I have to say, well, how many clients do I want to see in a week? Or how many videos do I want to create and post? I have to be very specific about that. And then I have to make sure it's something that I can measure. When I have something that is measurable, then I can put a check mark by and say, yeah, I got it done. And I know how I'm progressing once I've done that. So make sure that you put down specifically, write it down, commit to it. Make sure it's something that is measurable, something that is tangible. Otherwise, it's still just a fantasy. It's just an idea. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if I could, win the lottery, right? But once you measure, you write something down and you make it very concrete, you start getting control over that. The second step is pretty obvious. It's this part of it. I said the very first thing is to make sure that you have a goal that is both specific and measurable. The second step here is to plan. And within this plan, you've got to think, what is it that you have to do? What do I have to do to accomplish this? So for me, it might be setting aside a certain number of hours a day to work on a certain task. It's a certain thing that I have to do, and I create that space in my life to make that happen. I write down my plan. This is what I'm going to do. And it also has to be, you have to include, what is it that I'm willing to sacrifice? Now, this part of the plan is something that I'd never really considered before. I know it sounds strange, but Napolean Hill had me look at it from that different direction. It's not just what do you have to do, what do you have to sacrifice? So if I think about the things that I have to sacrifice, am I willing to give that up? And I will tell you that oftentimes when you look at the goal from that perspective, you start rethinking your goal. Maybe if you're not willing to sacrifice whatever it is that you have to give up, maybe you really don't want that after all. I know that there have been a number of times I've had to go back up to the first part and rework my goal, because I think, well, I'm not really willing to do that, so maybe I really don't want that. So what is it you have to do, and what is it that you have to give up? And then the third part of the plan is the timeliness of it. So you want to make sure that you say, when am I going to do this? How will I know I've done it if I don't have a time span on it? I need a time frame in which I can work. So I want to know what I have to do, what I have to give up, and when I'm going to do all of this. And that goes into the plan. That was step 2. Step 3, I've already said this, but let's just make it really clear. You have to write it down. It is not enough to keep it rolling around in your head. You have to write it down. It has to be clear and concise, something that you can put in a very short statement, that you can write it down. And then number 4, you have to read it aloud every morning and every night. Read it aloud. Read your plan, your goal, and your plan aloud. There is a lot of power in the spoken word. When you write it down and then you speak it, you say it, it is you making it happen. You are going to begin moving it in that direction. And the 5th step is to believe it. You have to believe that you can do this. You have to believe. Some will say that you act and you believe as if it has already happened. It isn't, I'm going to do this in the future. It is, this is what I'm doing. I am setting aside this time. I am creating this opportunity. I am doing these things. This is what I am doing. You start putting it into action immediately. Once you do that, you start seeing those things take shape. You start believing it, and it builds on itself. It creates the self-fulfilling prophecy. So again, what is your heart's desire? Step 1, you have to know what you want. You have to be specific, and you have to be it has to be measurable. Step 2 is, what is your plan? What are you going to do to make that happen? What are you going to give up? And how are you going to move forward? And then number 3, you have to write it down. Number 4, you have to make sure that you read it aloud every morning and every night until you've got it memorized, and then you're saying it aloud every morning and every night, when you get up in the morning and when you go to bed at night. And then you have to, number 5, believe and be thankful that you are able to accomplish your goals. Okay, that's it for today, and I'll catch you next time. See you then.